All right, welcome everyone to our presentation on our Detroit Study Away story maps. This is a presentation by a group of students who have spent the better part of the semester and then visited the city of Detroit, learning about the history of Detroit, as well as deindustrialization. We met as a class prior, and then we had a really central component to our spring break experience, which was going to and recording the history and the memories of people in the Jefferson-Chalmers neighborhood in Detroit. Our main event was a scan-a-thon where we invited community members to come and bring photographs and documents, and we scanned them, and then they shared their stories and memories with us. So we were very, very thankful that they welcomed us. The students have spent the week since spring break building, developing, researching, creating these story maps. We're excited to share these with our campus community and members of the Jefferson-Chalmers community via Zoom. We'd like to thank the Jefferson-Chalmers community for welcoming us and sharing their stories and memories with us. We would also like to thank the Center for Innovation in Sustainability and Resilience, the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, the Dean of Students Office, and the Social Sciences Department for their support. That we'll start with our first group. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Arlethea. I'm in environmental engineering.
And my name is Anne, and I am a master's student in environmental and energy policy.
And today we're going to talk about Jefferson-Chalmers and the CTC group, which is one of the many examples of community resilience that they have. So Jefferson-Chalmers is a unique community. For one reason is because they have various canals which shape their community, and also it's because of the relationship that they have with the neighboring city, Grosse Pointe, and the surrounding communities in the Detroit area. So Black people within the Jefferson-Chalmers community have faced some struggles, primarily due to segregation, during the time of segregation and redlining, due to the racism and discrimination. But despite these struggles, they have been able to demonstrate strength and resilience to be able to keep their community thriving. And one of those demonstrations is the CTC group. So we're going to start off with the history of Jefferson-Chalmers to kind of show why the CTC group was founded, and then we're going to talk more about the group itself. So Jefferson-Chalmers is located on the east side of Detroit. The red outline shows the city of Detroit, and here's the boundary of Jefferson-Chalmers, and there's Grosse Pointe, which is on the other side of the Detroit boundary. In the beginning, the land was claimed by the Fox Creek Indians, the Fox Iroquois, and the Anishinaabe Native Americans. And then it became inhabited by the French, American, and English settlers, and they called it the Grand Marais, also known as the Great Marsh, because this area was very marshy. So in the 19th century, industrialization began, and that's when the community in the Jefferson-Chalmers area really began to expand. A lot more people came in, and this area was originally a part of the village of Fairview, which was a part of Grosse Pointe Township. And this entire box shows the village of Fairview. And in 1907, the purple area became annexed by the city of Detroit, and the Jefferson-Chalmers community area is within this purple region. So although the population was rising within Jefferson-Chalmers in the beginning of the 20th century, it was still predominantly white. Many of the African Americans who moved to Detroit during this time were only able to live in Black Bottom or Paradise Valley, which are these areas shown here. These areas were about 95% Black, and also in Paradise Valley, it was a big commercial area, and all of the businesses in this area were Black owned. So they had everything from hospitals, clubs, restaurants, and everything in between. However, after World War II, the Federal Highway Act of 1956 and the Urban Renewal Act caused these communities to be uprooted. The Federal Highway Act was a thing that went through predominantly Black and minority communities and kind of selectively like broke up those communities. And so as you can see here, this is the Black Bottom area in Paradise Valley before this act occurred. And then this was after the Federal Highway Act. You can see that the highway I-375 goes directly through it. And then it's also surrounded by these parks, which were put in place under the guise of urban renewal. So, also there are currently historical markers in these locations on East Lafayette Street and Lafayette Park to commemorate these communities, and also right next to Ford Field in Detroit. So because their communities were uprooted, a lot of the residents in these areas had to move to different areas in Detroit, and a lot of them moved to Jefferson-Chalmers. However, they were only allowed to live on 3 specific streets, which were Clairpoint Street, Tennessee Street, and Connor Street, which are highlighted here in yellow. And that is why the name of this group is called CTC.
Okay. Go down a little bit more. Okay, so the main purpose of our story map is not only to inform you all on the history of the CTC group, but more importantly, why the CTC group was created. So as Arlethea kind of already pointed out to you, the National Housing Act of 1949, along with the Federal Highway Act of 1956, created these federal highways that were purposefully built to run right through predominantly Black communities of Paradise Valley and Black Bottom, which then resulted in a lot of Black people being uprooted and having to be relocated on their own means. A lot of, or not a lot, but quite a few of the Black people who were kind of uprooted from those 2 areas moved to Jefferson-Chalmers on those 3 Clairpoint, Tennessee, and Connor streets, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because those were the only 3 streets that allowed Black people to live in Jefferson-Chalmers at the time. So the reason why we're talking about the CTC group is because it was formed in 1975 to commemorate and preserve the history of those people who created such tight bonds to persevere through segregation in a time when equality was just not right. So moving into the 21st century, as housing segregation was slowly being outlawed, people who made up the first Black community in Jefferson-Chalmers were beginning to kind of spread out and move elsewhere. As times began to change, this history and the memory of those who first relocated to Jefferson-Chalmers was at risk of being lost. So in order to present the loss and preserve the memory and bond of those who relocated to Jefferson-Chalmers, in August of 1975, at the suggestion of Grether Boone Colvard, a group of former and current residents residing on Clairpoint, Tennessee, and Connor streets, called the CTC Old Timers Club, was created. And this point here, point number 1, marks the location that the club was first created in 1975. So at its formation, the club met monthly, and the club within 3 months really quickly outgrew their first location. So they then had to relocate to what is called the Maharas Recreation Center. Unfortunately, this center is kind of abandoned and no longer being used. But this is where they met because it was big enough to hold the vast growing number of people that were joining this club who in the past had ties to CTC streets. So the CTC Club is a mode of community preservation and remembrance through activity and coming together. So for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about some of the events that the CTC group hosts in order to bring some of those community members back together. So on March 3rd of 1978, Gladys Wells Mitchell spearheaded the first ever CTC reunion and inaugural ball. This ball was a huge success with over 1,000 current and former residents of CTC streets attending over 64 years. So this point 3 is where the first inaugural ball was held. And since then, they've been holding cabaret balls every single year, and the parties only get bigger and bigger, which speaks to the amount of people who've been impacted by living on those 3 once predominantly black streets. So these are really just essentially really big, but also formal parties where people enjoy food and dancing, and there's bands. And this is the location of the last cabaret ball that was held. So another event is the sunrise service picnics. So at 7 a.m. A local community church will host a service. And then just throughout the day, people are gathering at the Maharis Gentry Park, where there's music and people are kind of picnicking and grilling. And then in the evenings, the CTC group hosts raffles to give away prizes. So the sunrise service picnics, along with the cabaret balls, are their 2 biggest events that bring together so many people who have ties to the CTC streets over the years. Some additional things they do to impact their community are holiday banquets and Thanksgiving meal packages. So then the rest of this, our website that we created is essentially kind of a historical archive of the presidents who led the CTC group over the years. This is Beverly Hawkins. She is the one who provided us pretty much all the information that we were able to utilize in this slideshow. And then also she's the current president of the CTC group and has been since 2010. So this is just a quote from her. "I am so privileged and honored to be a part of this community group. I never thought this is something that I would be able to do." So then Jerome Christmas, Mahaly Ferguson, these are all the presidents that have ran and led the CTC group over the years. I'm just gonna go kind of quickly through these. Clarence Wilson was the first president of the CTC club in 1975. So then this is just some scans that we took while we were in Jefferson-Chalmers of some of the materials that we were provided. This is just kind of a history booklet that goes into a little more detail of the CTC group. So I guess to really just drive our point home, we want to emphasize that the CTC Old Timers Club was created with the purpose of preserving the bond of those first Black residents who resided on Clairpoint, Tennessee, and Connors streets. And all the events that they put on since 1975 all the way through today act as a mode of preservation and coming together for all of the people who have lived on those streets ever since 1975 and all the way through today. So that is our presentation, and thank you so much for just listening.